the Nuggets are probably down there, probably around 10th, maybe not quite that low. But if you're going to pick a dark horse team to win the West or even win the title, I think the Nuggets are that team because everything that they just add back, Jamal Murray, of course, takes some of the pressure off Nikola Jokic, but again, man, Michael Porter Jr., of course, he has to stay healthy, but this is a 6'10" forward who's giving you 42% from three and shooting probably at 8 a game. So it's really an amazing team if they can all be together. They got Bones Highland last year in the draft who ended up making one of the all-rookie teams. So he's been really good. It's going to be their backup guard. And the Nuggets just have a lot of different options. They still have Aaron Gordon, who was a number 1 on the team before, probably not even the number 4 on the Nuggets now, but he's a guy who can give them some offense when they need it, and then play some, good defense for them as well. And I think the Nuggets can just throw a lot at you, and they have a lot of good players. They have one great player, Jamal Murray, maybe. Even before his injury, I don't know that he was great, other than just really good. But it's just a lot of good players, and those teams typically do really well in the regular season because the other teams, when you just look at who they have 4 through 10, they just can't match up with what the Nuggets can throw at you.
Yep, and then they added Bruce Brown on top of that, a guy who upped his three-point shooting ability from the mid-20s to 40%. So another outside weapon they can use, a guy that can, guard both the guard and forward position for you. Kind of a big body, even though he's only 6'4", and with his stretching shooting ability, that's really improved over the last year or so. I mean, it's just an embarrassment of riches, of mid-level riches for Denver that are really helping, and especially in this early phase where they're not going to look their best. Obviously, you're trying to incorporate and work Murray and Porter back into basketball, and so like you saw in opening night at Utah, it didn't quite go the way that people thought it would, especially with a team like Utah that looks like they're going to be tanking for Wembanyama. And then they go out and win game 1. So definitely not what people were expected, but Denver will get there. It's just going to take a little bit of time, working a couple guys back from injury. Really important guys, too. Obviously, you're talking about your number 2 and your number 3. So it'll take some time, but, come All-Star break and beyond, the Denver Nuggets are going to be making some noise.
Yeah, and I expect them to be one of the top seeds in the West, too. And I think the West is interesting because you look at so many teams, and I don't know, there's probably 3, maybe 4 that you could see winning the West, different levels of believability, of course. But if you're just asking me, can this team make the conference finals, that list is probably 8 deep. It's, there's a lot of teams that I could see being better and winning, 2 rounds in the playoffs. Again, different levels of believability. I'm going to pick the Warriors to make the West Finals before I'm going to pick the Pelicans, but I don't think that the Pelicans can't do it.
And let's go right there. Let's talk about them Pelicans with Zion Williamson and Dirty KD, as I like to call him. They got, they were looking pretty decent last year without Zion. Brandon Ingram was stepping his game up, and he's kind of been underrated, under the radar since going, from LA to the Pelicans. But he stepped his game up year after year, and I think he should be one of the top, 25 players in the NBA this year, no question. He's got everything to his game that he needs, and it just except for the publicity because he plays down in New Orleans. But between him and Zion, you got 2 guys that can go out and get you 25 to 30 every single night.
Yeah, you got a third guy in C.J. McCollum that can do that too, and then you have,
right.
Herb Jones, you have Jonas Valanciunas. It's a really good team that the Pelicans have, and obviously the big factor is going to be Zion's health. But there's no reason that the Pelicans can't again make the Western Conference Finals. I think it's going to be a team that makes the playoffs. Zion obviously looks more fit this year than he has in years past, finally. But you add him with Brandon Ingram, and then just some of the other guys that they have on their roster, sort of like the Nuggets that we talked about, right? They have Jose Alvarado, who kind of made his name in the playoffs last year, harassing Chris Paul. They have Devontae Graham. You look at other guys, Herb Jones, we already mentioned, but Larry Nance Jr., who's been a good NBA player, probably not his entire career, but every year after like his second year, Larry Nance has been a good player. And it's just a lot of athleticism that they have on the team, and they can hit you just with, different things. You can go Zion at the 5 and run small ball. Obviously, you can have Valanciunas out there to make, probably play a little bit more traditional, although Valanciunas can step outside and shoot a little bit as well. But it's a team that they're going to have enough defenders, I think, or that's probably the question, is if they're going to have enough defenders. And it's a big if. But if Zion can get there defensively, he had 4 steals in their opening night win. But if he can get there defensively and show off some of that defensive ability that he showed at Duke, and he hasn't shown it in the NBA. But if he can get there, that's just another guy that they can throw on the wing to make, the opponent's life obviously more difficult. And if Zion's a bad defender, then opponents are, of course, going to have an easier time scoring against the Pelicans. But I like the team a lot. They're going to be certainly a fun team to watch. That I don't think anybody's picking them to be the best team in the West. But in terms of like your league pass rankings, they might be number 1. It'd be a really fun team to watch all year long.
And this is crazy. So we've just talked about 5 teams in the West, and we haven't even talked about Phoenix yet. We haven't talked about Minnesota yet. We haven't talked about Dallas yet. This West is stacked, dude. We didn't even talk about the team that was the number 1 seed in the West, the Phoenix Suns last year, before getting blowed out in Game 7.
82 games.
Right? It's just ridiculous. And so, the Suns with Ayton, who's obviously disgruntled after everything that went down with the way the season ended. Booker, can he make that next leap? Can Chris Paul continue to fight off Father Time the way that he has? Didn't look like it at the end of the year. It looked like Father Time really caught up with him. Minnesota adding Rudy Gobert to go along with Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Angelo Russell. Dallas, obviously, Luka Doncic. They lost Jalen Brunson, but they brought back, they got back Tim Hardaway Jr. The West is full, dude. It's absolutely full of teams that can really just hurt one another, take one another out to see who's going to be left standing at the end to represent the West in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I don't know that there's going to be a whole lot of separation in the West between seeds like 3 and 10, which is the play-in, and it's certainly not between like 6 and 10. But the West is, they're full of teams. All the teams you mentioned are teams that can absolutely make the playoffs. But just by math, two of those teams you mentioned are going to be in the play-in, and then you're probably looking at the Lakers as a play-in team as well, who we also haven't mentioned. But it's incredible the amount of I don't even know necessarily that it is a deep conference, and I think most of those teams are good. I also don't know that how many of the teams in the West are like top 5 teams in the NBA. So the East might be better up top, and I actually think the East is fairly deep as well. But I think just in terms of the West, it's going to be really even. I think the Warriors are probably a clear number 1. And then the Clippers should be better than kind of all these other teams that we've talked about. But I think everyone from like the Nuggets on down are going to be fairly similar. The Nuggets should be better than like Timberwolves by a decent margin, I would guess. But all those teams in the middle, the Pelicans, the Suns, and it's funny we're calling the Suns a middle team, and again they won 60-something games last year. But it's just the way it goes. Basketball moves quick, and it seems like everyone's just kind of writing the Suns off because of what we saw in the playoffs. And then again you have another year of Luka and him only getting better for a year, and he seems like a guy that just nobody can deal with, no matter how good of perimeter defenders that you have. It seems like Luka's going to make them look silly. So what does that look like another year? Kind of just with NBA experience and with another year of getting better, is he good enough to raise a team to a top 2 or 3 seed? Like LeBron was kind of his first time around in Cleveland. It's something that we'll have to see, and it is something that I am obviously excited to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 through 10 is going to be ridiculous. I mean, I don't know how you rank the Grizzlies versus the Mavs versus the Suns versus it's just they all have studs. There you go.
Hey, Ryan Griffin here. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Griffin and Bass. Be sure to give us your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to click the bell to receive the latest notifications from DSN and subscribe for breaking news, community blogs, polls, contests, and other content.